Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T, and I hope you guys are continuing to have a great day. I'm going to be positive. Debbie Collier's son, Jeffrey Bearden, has gone out of his comfort zone recently to speak out publicly about the insensitive way in which he claims the sheriff of Habersham County, Sheriff Joey Terrell, treated him when he called to ask about his mother's case. Jeffrey had previously asked the media and the true crime community to give him and his family time to both grieve and to grapple with the disturbing circumstances of his mother's death. But after allegedly being snickered at by Sheriff Terrell multiple times when he called to inquire about the status of the investigation and the recent leaks out of his office to the press, Jeffrey has appealed to the internet for help in disseminating his story. Jeffrey is asking publicly for, 1, Sheriff Terrell to apologize to him and his family for laughing at him and them and disrespecting his deceased mother, Debbie Collier, and 2, for Sheriff Terrell to resign from his publicly appointed position because of his lack of empathy for victims and victims' families and because of his team's inability to apparently conduct a good investigation. Clearly, Jeffrey was very upset to read that the investigators allegedly switched from considering his mother's death an act of foul play to either an accident or some sort of scenario where she did this to herself. Now, in some ways, this is a he said, she said situation because I'm not sure that Jeffrey recorded the call he had with the sheriff, but I'm leaning more toward believing Jeffrey's story than not believing it. Why, you might ask? Well, for one, Jeffrey Bearden appears to be a very private person. For him to come out like this probably took a lot. Second, it turns out that Sheriff Joey Terrell has been accused of laughing at victims in the past. But before I tell you about all that laughing, let me share the most recent comments Jeffrey made about the case. He spoke to 11 Alive News on Tuesday, November 1st. Jeffrey is as confused as we are as to why his mother, Debbie, was up north on Saturday, September 10th. He told 11 Alive News the following, and I quote, "It doesn't make sense to me why she was in Clayton, Georgia, especially that there is a Dollar General that she frequently visited that was less than a mile from her home," end quote. Jeffrey also found the items his mom purchased, the rain poncho, the torch lighter, paper towels, blue tarp, and the reusable red tote bag, odd. He said, and I quote, "I've never known her to be a camper. I mean, we have tarps at the house. My stepdad works in construction. I found about 20 to 30 reusable bags at the house. She was very green. She had a bunch of those." When watching the video of his mother in the Family Dollar store in Clayton, Jeffrey wasn't convinced it was his mom. He told 11 Alive's reporter the following, and I quote, "I have concerns about the appearance of the person in that Family Dollar," end quote. The reporter then said, "So you're questioning if that was even your mom in that video?" And Jeffrey responded, "Absolutely. Yeah, I am. I have a lot of concerns about if that was my mom in that actual video because that doesn't actually appear like her posture," end quote. And I will say that I made note of Debbie Collier's posture in that video too. Obviously, I don't know Debbie Collier, but she did sort of slump while standing at the checkout counter trying to find her credit card. I used to take ballet, so I notice when people slump to that degree. 11 Alive also asked Jeffrey if he thought his sister could have any involvement in his mother's death, and he said, "I do not think my sister has the capacity to hurt my mom." She was my mom's lifeline, but I don't trust the people that my sister hangs out with, and that's my concern, end quote. Wow. So I'd like to know more about what Jeffrey means about Amanda being his mom's lifeline, and I'd also like to hear exactly who he's alluding to when talking about the people Amanda hangs out with. I mean, I guess we can probably infer who Jeffrey's talking about. Jeffrey also said that he's never seen his mom Venmo that large amount of money, so that was very out of character for her. And when asked about his mom's case, Jeffrey basically said that he's not been told by law enforcement that it's not foul play. So the police have not told him that they are looking at it being an accident or some sort of act where Debbie did it to herself. Jeffrey also made it clear that he wants justice for his mother and for the Habersham Sheriff's Office to be transparent with his family regarding the investigation. He also spoke directly to whoever may have committed this crime, saying, and I quote, "I'm not going to stop until you are in jail or on death row," end quote. So to this I say, you go, Jeffrey. I am 100% behind you. If this was foul play, then the person or persons responsible need to be arrested, charged, given a trial, and if found guilty, they need to be made to pay. It's unfortunate that Jeffrey doesn't have confidence now in the Habersham Police Department. It reminds me of Candace Cooley and Justin Round's feelings about the Box Elder Sheriff's Office in regards to how they've treated them and their missing son's case, Dylan. I know that investigators need to keep evidence on the down low, even from the family, but they could at least speak to Jeffrey on a regular basis, especially when leaks like that one saying investigators are considering that Debbie Collier somehow did this to herself. When leaks like that come out in the press, they need to talk to Jeff. I hope Jeffrey has a lot of support around him because at this point, he probably doesn't know who in the family he can trust. He was away in Maryland when Debbie died, so there's no way he had an actual hand in this crime unless people want to consider that Jeffrey could have hired someone to carry this out. I'm not going to go there, though, because it's not the simplest explanation for what happened to Debbie Collier. Moving on to other allegations made against Sheriff Joey Terrell of the Habersham Sheriff's Office, namely allegations that he laughed about injuring a baby during a no-knock raid. Here's what happened. According to an article on CNN.com, in 2014, Sheriff Terrell and members of a Northeast Georgia SWAT team participated in a 3 a.m. no-knock drug raid at a home in Cornelia, Georgia. The SWAT team was made up of 6 to 7 officers from the Habersham County Sheriff's Office and the Cornelia Police Department. The officers planned on entering the home unannounced and arresting the drug dealer who they believed lived there. Because of the manner in which the SWAT team entered the residence, an innocent 19-month-old baby sleeping near the front door was gravely injured and nearly died. The story became big news in Georgia and beyond, and the Habersham and Cornelia police departments were widely criticized for not taking the proper precautions to ensure that A, the drug dealer they were after was indeed inside that home, and B, to ensure that no one else was inside the home when they raided it, meaning no innocent parties like a baby. After the incident, Sheriff Terrell went on the defensive. He spoke to many reporters to share his office's side of the story. Terrell told CNN affiliate WGCL the following, and I quote, "A confidential informant hours earlier had purchased methamphetamine at the house," end quote. Sheriff Terrell explained that his team had made an undercover drug purchase at the house just a few hours before the raid. They'd sent a confidential informant to the home, and this person allegedly purchased $50 worth of meth. Per Terrell, the confidential informant told them that there were men standing guard outside the house, but the informant couldn't say with certainty if those men were armed. Sheriff Terrell stated, and I quote, "Because the suspected drug dealer named Juanis Thontheva had a previous weapons charge, officers were issued a no-knock warrant for the residence," end quote. So this means that the officers were not required to give the inhabitants any warning about the raid, and they also did not have to do an assessment of the residence to find out who was inside and where they were. Remember, this was at 3 a.m., so most people would be sound asleep at that hour. Sheriff Terrell is quoted as saying that when the SWAT team hit the home's front door with a battering ram, it resisted as if something was up against it. So one of the officers threw a flashbang grenade inside the house. I'm assuming this officer maybe broke a window to lob this explosive inside. In case you, like me, don't know what a flashbang grenade is, let me explain. Also known as a stun grenade, a flashbang grenade is an explosive device used to disorient the person or persons on the receiving end. Once detonated, the grenade burns at 2,000 to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit and produces a blinding flash of light accompanied by an extremely loud bang. The grenade lights up a dark room so that the officers can see in the darkness. Anyone unfortunate to be inside the space will be rendered temporarily blind. Well, here's the problem with this particular incident in Cornelia, Georgia. According to Sheriff Terrell, once inside the house, the SWAT team realized that a portable playpen was the object blocking the front door. The flashbang grenade that the officer lobbed through the window had landed in the playpen where a baby named Bunkham, or Boo for short, had been sound asleep next to his parents' bed. According to Sheriff Terrell, a medic soon arrived and rushed the baby outside to give it first aid. As the medic attended to the baby, an ambulance was called to the scene. Unfortunately, weather conditions prevented the baby from being transported via life flight to Atlanta's Grady Memorial Hospital, 75 miles southwest of Cornelia, Georgia. Thus, the baby had to be driven to the hospital. Can you imagine what the baby and its parents were going through? They'd just been awakened by this shocking explosion, and then they find their baby, when they can finally see, in critical condition. According to the baby's mother, 30-year-old Alicia Phone Savannah, who spoke to a reporter at CNN, the doctors had to put her son into an induced coma. She also told the reporter that the family was sleeping at her sister-in-law's house when the police arrived, and the grenade seared a hole through the portable playpen after exploding in the baby's pillow. So the raid had taken place at a sister-in-law's house. The baby was taken to the burn unit at the hospital with significant injuries to his face, a large cut on his chest, and unable to breathe. Baby Boo was given a 50% chance of survival. It turns out that the drug dealer that Sheriff Terrell and the SWAT team were after wasn't even at home during the raid. The only people in the residence were the baby's mother and father and their 3 other children, along with the drug dealer's mother. And according to the freethoughtproject.com article, no drugs or weapons were found at the home. Apparently, The baby's family had moved to the Cornelia residence after their home in Wisconsin burned down. Can you imagine that? And now they're dealing with this problem with their child being injured so gravely. Per Sheriff Terrell, while the family members were aware of drug activity in the home, they kept the children out of sight in a different room while all these goings-on were happening. End quote. Terrell stated, and I quote, "In hindsight, officers would have conducted the raid differently had they known there was a child inside the home, but there was no sign of children during the alleged drug purchase that prompted the raid. We would obviously have done things different. We might have gone in through a side door. We would not have used a flashbang." End quote. Note that the incident was reviewed by a state grand jury that declined to return an indictment against the SWAT team. The incident was then turned over to U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, Sally Quillian Yates, for yet another review. In the end, the SWAT team was disbanded and the family was awarded $964,000 in a settlement reached with Habersham's Board of County Commissioners. So it sounds like the taxpayers in the area paid the monies to the family. And there's another side to this story, and that is the side of the family. Several police watchdog groups websites, one called uglyjudge.com, another called the AmericanPoliceState.com, and yet another called the Free Thought Project. They allege that the confidential informant purchased $50 worth of meth from someone who had once lived at the home. It sounds like they're saying that the drug dealer no longer lived at the home. They also allege that Sheriff Terrell's office denied any responsibility for the injuries to the child and fought hard to avoid paying out damages. No officers were charged for their near deadly negligence, and they defended their actions by saying that they couldn't have done a thorough investigation prior to the raid because it would have risked revealing that the officers were watching the house. But here's the kicker and the connection to the Debbie Collier case and Jeffrey Bearden's assertion that Sheriff Terrell snickered at him when he called to ask about his mother's case. According to an article by John Vibes of the freethoughtproject.com website, Sheriff Terrell allegedly laughed about his deputies flash banging the baby. If that allegation is true, that certainly does indicate a sheriff with a very cold personality and a complete lack of compassion and empathy. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories, do me a favor, smash that like button, leave me a comment, subscribe to my channel. You can join a membership if you want to support me. You can also make a one-time donation to my Patreon.